Hello. Welcome to my ongoing therapy session about what's been going on in our little world here. I was just writing something this afternoon, but I have a newsletter here that I started because no one reads blogs anymore, and I'm in the business of being noticed, so I've got to build up my own followership, and it's a whatnot show in the rest of the promoting yourself world. But I was thinking you got to write something, and I was thinking recently. I joined Pivotal, who you probably know, in 2015 in January, and it seemed to be a good idea. And as Nick was just saying, things were going well, and it works. And then, as I'll get into, my need for therapy arose over the past couple of years. So I try to, as any good therapist, which I need to find a new one, like tells you. You have to accept the way things are and adapt to them and use that as the energy and the basis of your happiness or something. And so to that end, when I'm in a positive way of thinking about this, I like to think about what can we learn, what can we teach the present and the future about things that already existed or in the past and were perfectly normal, but we seem to have moved on to other things. So I've posed it in this kind of odd framing of what the Cloud Foundry world, the community, can do with the new sort of way of thinking about things, the platform engineering, the Kubernetes world. And I think we do have, much more than 7 or 8 years, but we have, let's say 6, 7, 8 years of Cloud Foundry-based platforms actually being used, as Nick was going over, for real stuff, right? Like all the time, every day. And not only the technical side of it being used, but also how you get people in a large organization to use it and to support it and to like it, right? All of the people like to call this, in the DevOps world, they call this culture. But the people, the practices, the way that people think, all of the soft skills and things like that. So I think I've got about 3 or 4 things that I think are really strong learnings that you can have from any type of platform success that you want to make sure to pass on to the other people or retire before you have to see them make the same mistakes over and over again. So to summarize a lot of it, and kind of especially for the people in this room, right? I think the major way that I'll say we, being charitable myself, I'd stopped programming in 2005. Now I just make slides. So I'm not really much of this we. But the thing that I think we can do a lot is really just, it's kind of hard, especially, I've learned how to do it, as you can tell, but it's hard, especially as technologists, to talk nicely about yourself and talk about success and how things are going and try to be advisatory. I'll make up that word to people, but I think that's what a lot of I see missing out there. Or again, the opportunity is to really just go over the practices that we as a community has built up, the way that we think about things. You can talk about the technology and stuff, which is cool, but really more about how you get it used and applied and you think through it and kind of help out as this practice is being built under a exciting new name. So first of all, this is me. Like I said, I stopped programming in 2005. This is the last award I won, my team. You can see it's FY05, which probably means it was actually calendar year 2004 or something. And I used to work at the last place at BMC Software, if you're familiar with them. If you ever used any software I wrote, I'll be at the reception tomorrow night, and I will apologize for if needed. Otherwise, you're welcome if you liked it. I actually got this award, my team, for being innovative. And this is maybe not a tip that we need to tell people, but it's a good career tip, is I would have preferred something that height than cash rather than this awesome Galileo thing. But it's fine. It lasted this long. It doesn't work. Anyways, I found this when I went back to Austin this Christmas, and you can see I was very happy about it. But I work at VMware with all the VMware people here. And I work on the developer advocate team, but I really don't ever talk with developers nor advocate for them. More what I do is I talk with management and executives and kind of enterprise architects, the people who are programming and architecting their organization. And what I do is I study what works and doesn't work. And by study, I mean talk with them and then have very small footnotes, as you'll see, attributing things I've said to them. So I really just gather that up and report it back and try to help people out. I'm genuinely interested in the state of software, the state of applications being better. I'm sure you all use software every day that you don't like, that's annoying, and we should have that not be the case. That would be nice. I had to renew my passport recently, and it could use a lot of software. It was as good as the US government could make it. But it could be a lot better if we just had a little bit of software, as an example. And I have a bunch of nonsense there at a cool domain name that costs way too much money. So kind of adding, let's kind of think about what platform engineering is, right? And this was the first part of my successful therapy about a year and a half or so ago. And that is, like I said, I used to work in systems management, and if you, I don't know if people still use that phrase. I think we say observability or something. But if you've worked in system management for a while, what you notice is that the same group of people tend to build up a product. That product is purchased by a company, and then they leave after 2 years and build that same product up again with a funnier name. And then they repeat that pattern over and over again, right? And so I've known systems management long enough that I'm totally cool with that. It's not a big deal, right? And so I was realizing if we apply that to platforms, which I still haven't really defined, but I mean, really, do I need to define it for y'all? Here we are. But if we think about application platforms, application runtimes environments, all this kind of stuff, we more or less have been doing the same thing forever, right? Now, I don't know mainframe programming. I didn't work on AS400s. I barely know how to run stuff on Windows. But it occurs to me that, like, all the way back to the beginning of when I used to do Java Enterprise stuff, that was a platform that basically looked like all of these. And then we kind of went into having another platform, again, completely rebuilt, that ran on the cloud, called Heroku, that was cool. And then intentionally, here we are, kind of patterned after that. We had our friend that we're with right now. And then now, what we have arrived at is this is actually a great reference architecture from a working group at the CNCF of what a platform looks like, right? And once I accepted that basically every, I have a philosophy degree, so I can't do math very well. But every 5 or 8 years or so, depending on the platform, we basically just table flip it and get rid of it and rewrite it, because that's the way things are. It kind of it helps you accept the nature of things. Now, being less cynical about it, I think what happens is that when I look across the history of all these platforms, and also, I didn't put like the LAMP stack and service-oriented architectures and JEE and J2EE, every single platform that's come before this and still scurries around here and there. But we do get like incrementally better and incrementally come up with new features through each sort of cycle that we go through, right? And so it is like, I don't know, it's kind of annoyingly destructive evolution, if you will, but it does tend to make things better as we go forward, right? And of course, most recently, right, hence my joke at the beginning, our good old friend Kubernetes was the one with the hands firmly, if unknowingly, on the table there as it threw it all up into the air and really gave us, and by us, I don't mean us, I mean as an industry, gave us the opportunity to rebuild everything on a new container orchestrator, which hopefully will turn out much better. So I think the first lesson, as we see kind of where the table's been set back up for a year or two or so, people are building stuff on top of it. And as Nick was saying, this is, I think, where you get the rise of this idea of platform engineering of like, we've got all this infrastructure. We're going to make it usable for developers. We need a name for that. What should we call that? And then that, kind of coalesces into this term, which I haven't quite tracked down the exact origin of the term, but I have some exciting theories we could talk about later. But I think one of the lessons that I've learned from the Cloud Foundry community, when you're kind of building up this new community around developers and platforms and stuff, is to like, especially for my lack of explaining exactly what platform engineering is, or if you've tried to look up a definition over the past 2 years, the kind of lack of one agreed upon one, is like, you should be really clear what it's all about, right? And have a very crisp sort of like, not only just like a ridiculously short phrase that kind of represents the top of what it is, but be very precise about what's in and what's out about it, right? And I think in the Cloud Foundry world, it is pretty obvious like what the bounds are. And most of the people here and listening online would know a lot better than I do, but I think it's always been more or less known what's in and what's out, right? Whereas if we look a lot at what platform engineering is kind of evolving to, and this is woefully out of date being a year old or so, but I was just talking with someone last night about it, and I think what platform engineering is trying to be is everything that already exists in the Cloud Foundry world, except like developer portals on top, right? Kind of like grafting that on top of there. Now, I don't mean to be insultingly like brief about it, but it really, if you kind of look through, things like this, diagrams like this, and explanations, a lot of it is sort of just like if you think about if we're at the Cloud Foundry layer and we're like, oh, we got all our container stuff, we got all our middleware, backing services, or whatever you want to call it, and then we have this great like deployment, this CF push metaphor and literal here. And that's it, we're out, right? Like, we don't necessarily go much above that level. Whereas platform engineering is saying, like, what if we went above that level, right? What if we went into things like Backstage and actual, like, portals? What if we just added Confluence on top and maybe had even more opinions about what CI/CD is? And I don't know if that community has that clarity about it, but like that's the first thing I think that the platform engineering community needs to sort out very quickly is like, what's a nice, clear definition? Because, I went and read the official Gartner definition and then one that my old Red Monk coworker, Donnie Burkholz, wrote recently. And it's just like, automation and self-service and like, yes, we should have that. But there's not something like distinct and new and evolved from it. But there could be. So that's one of the first things that I think would be good to help that community out with. Now, the next one is, well, this seems obvious when you're building an application developer platform that's meant to have application developers write their applications and run it on your platform and make their lives easier. But I think it is always good to remind oneself, if you're working on platforms, like what the point of it is. Like I have this jokey metaphor for why I think a lot of the existing Kubernetes installs don't work out, and that is because if you put in all the work and all the fun and whatnot of running Kubernetes, what you end up with is a blinking cursor, right? That's just sort of like, now what? And like you just give a blinking cursor to an application developer and they say, now what? I'm going over here. Like, I don't really care. Or worst case scenario, as this crowd very well knows, is, now what? I'm going to build a platform on top of it, which is perhaps the worst words you ever want to hear an application developer say, as you know. So I think that, and this is actually pretty strong in the platform engineering community over the past 6 or 7 months now. You see it crop up quite a bit. But there's this quote from our buddy Thomas over at Mercedes, and he really summarizes the spirit that they take, and that I think a lot of the people who work in this community take, is that we think of ultimately, no matter how far down in the stack we are or how high up or wherever, like we realize that the people using this are application developers, right? There's a reason that we're doing all this work, and that's ultimately so that pixels move around on the screen. And yes, of course, you could have APIs and services where pixels move around in metaphoric pipes and stuff like that, but it's not complicated. But we've got UIs and applications that are using, so like let's always think about not only how we're building this thing, but how we're running it and managing it in our organizations, right? How we product manage this rather than just sort of like say, here's a blinking cursor, and kind of tarry off into wherever people who install blinking cursors go when they want to relax. So the next thing that I've learned over the years, and I think this community has taught me, and again, a lot of these, and most of them are not like technical or architectural things. They're about how you put these tools into use, right? And how you not only use them, but make them wanted and valuable and useful year after year after year, expand in usage, right? And that is, now, coming from a vendor, I, of course, am obsessed with this thing, but I also see it used with inside organizations over and over again to make sure that the platforms actually get used, right? And that is figuring out some way to explain the value of what you're doing. Now, I could have said business outcome if I really wanted to turn off everyone with words and jargon. And value I even felt a little bad about, but it fits. I ran out of space. And what I mean by that is proving to people that the platform not only works, like it stays up, but that it's like valuable. See, I can't even figure out a new word, but that it's giving you benefit, it's giving you profit. It's making the way your organization works, the way you run your applications better, right? Which really amounts to it's less hassle. Of course, it needs to work. That's like requirement number 0. I always think, story 0 is user would like software to work. That it's always good to make sure you have. But also that it's, people like to say cheap or cost less, but I think in terms of efficiency, right? That you're getting whatever result you wanted. I can more easily renew my passport without having to, it's actually a pretty good process. You fill out a PDF online and you submit it, but it gets a little ridiculous when you have to go in and like raise up your right hand to swear to it. Like, what does that mean, right? Like, anyhow. But you speed up a process of doing something with an application. And so a lot of what we in this community, and again, mostly, maybe not mostly, but in large part driven by those of us who have a commercial interest, is we have developed very detailed, intricate frameworks to show that it's been worth all the effort to put that platform in place, right? So as Nick was kind of going over, it's sort of like inarguable that like a Cloud Foundry platform running in place is valuable and like does its job and is not crazy, right? Like it works. And that is something that, especially as you're building something as all-encompassing, as important to an organization as a platform, whatever you may be running it on, you want to, from the get-go, develop a framework to evaluate it, right? Like I like the idea of how many developers you can support with an operator, how many applications you can support. Those kind of ratios are very important for people who make these decisions to continue doing something, to fund it. But also, when you're doing your kind of word-of-mouth marketing to other people in your organization, other development teams, other operations and infrastructures people, other developers you want to come work on your platform project. You also need the same type of metrics, the same proving that it's valuable, that it's not just some bizarre science project. And I don't know, this is just a random one I chose from Gartner recently. I realize you can't really read it right now, but it's a good start. Having something that you consistently use is good, that focuses on that entire end-to-end process. Again, our goal is to move pixels around on the screen, right? Like, so everything that happens in that cycle, how do we make our platform, our role in that, very valuable? And then finally, the other thing that I think is valuable from any successful open source community like the Cloud Foundry world, but especially in the area of platforms, is to think about like what community means. And not only what it means definitionally, but how you engineer it, take care of it, architect it, and ongoingly not only take care of it for itself, have things like this, the foundation backing stuff and people themselves, but also how you use it to make the project, the platform successful in the users. And so, when I was a young developer back earning my exciting Galileo clock or whatever that thing was. And then working at Red Monk, I spent a lot of time talking with organizations back in the 2000s about open source. And I think, the obvious thing is that you want to cultivate like the people who are doing it, make it a welcome community, have a certain amount of governance that makes sense, make sure your licensing fits, all those exciting, thrilling things that we learned in the 2000s. But I think something that we've kind of lost along the way are a few other things here, which is, and I talked about this already, but having a purpose, like a definition of what the platform does, right? And I went over that at the beginning, having simplicity and clarity of what goes on there, right? And if you remember historically, back to the early Kubernetes things, there was always lots of back and forth about who this was for. It's for developers. No, it's not for developers. You put an application on it. No, this is a platform for building a platform. And like there's this tossing back and forth of what it was until it kind of just chaotically like came up with something, right? And then now we're in the era of we should build something for developers to use this on top of it, right? So having this purpose around the community that is consistent and kind of guides what it does is very valuable. But then the other part, which we've always had when it comes to community and open communities, but I think that I saw most intensely, and I still see most intensely in the Cloud Foundry world, is really taking on the users, the end users, the people who don't work on it but who run it and use it, having them be a huge part of your community, right? And that's important from a product management standpoint to like know what your customers or your users want to do, but it's equally valuable for the longevity of the project, right? So when I've talked with people over the years who are skeptical about like using a Cloud Foundry-based platform or whatever else, or this may shock you, I just had a conversation with someone last week and they said like, my bosses aren't sure about moving from a waterfall process to Agile. They think it's weird. But anytime there's like something, you're talking with an organization or a group of people who are hesitant to adapt something because it sounds too good to be true, right? Like we saw a lot of low-level demos of Cloud Foundry stuff, but if you've seen the kind of user-facing demos of Cloud Foundry, it's like, look, I just type this and now I'm done, right? I mean, I'm being snarky here, but like a lot of the promise of what a platform does, especially Cloud Foundry, sounds way too good to be true, right? Like it sounds like that doesn't happen, right? There must be some exception. What are the footnotes? Like, how about security? Gotcha, right? Like there's always people who are trying to like figure out holes in what you're saying. And what's valuable there, and what I've noticed, is that you have to, as the builders of the community, you can't really do that job. You have to rely on the users to talk with each other, right? The most valuable type of marketing, I work in marketing, so thanks for having me, but is word of mouth marketing, right? Which you have no control over. And that basically means peers of your users talking with each other and being like, I know, sounds crazy, sounds too good to be true, but let me tell you what happened here. And yeah, security, but we figured it out, right? Like everything was fine, and now we actually run it and it's cool, right? And I've seen time and time again, maybe not every single organization that takes on Cloud Foundry or a platform, but there's a few of those conversations that are key to actually turning an organization over to doing it. And so that is something that sort of exists in the platform engineering community. But again, it's kind of young enough of a community that they don't have that kind of momentum of building up the users who are talking with each other. But really focusing on and cultivating their role in the community becomes key for the long-term success. And there's one that's not on here that I think is also the real reason, not real reason, but another big reason that community is valuable is, it's been a little weird in the Cloud Foundry world for the past 3 or 4 years, right? But we're still here because we have a very strong community, a very strong user base, right? And so, like, despite all things that have happened over, I guess, like 10 years or so, right? Like, there's been a consistency in the platform, in the project, in the community, and it's fine. Everything's all right, despite comings and goings of this, that, and the other. And I think that's why I kind of focus a lot more on the sustainability of the community, how you build out a long-term community, and really kind of garden the long-term of it, rather than just building up a stack or like building up a product that you then ship. So thanks for having me here and listening in. I uploaded these slides, not that they'd be very valuable. You can click on some of the things if you want, but they're at the bottom of that page there. And I hope you had a good day here. It was very nice. I enjoyed it, certainly. And with that, thank you.